All right, we're at 6:20. I want to make sure we get our speaker up here and ready to go. So I'm going to introduce our speaker here this morning, Joe Musselman. That's a couple of you said, well, that's a great last name. I would agree. Joe Musselman is a proud American entrepreneur and investor. He's the founder and managing partner of Bravo Victor Venture Capital, or BVVC, a U.S.-based early seed and Series A venture capital fund headquartered in Chicago with operations all across the country. He's accountable for the firm's strategic vision and day-to-day mission operations. He leads all teams at the firm: capital, investment, portfolio, and fund operation. He chairs the investment committee at BVCC. Since 2019, across his portfolio universe, they've early seeded many early growth investments into companies. I'll let him kind of discuss any of those that he wants to talk about. He's earned the backing of Forbes Midas Touch investors, top technology founders, prestigious institutions, Fortune 100 executives, family offices, and cross-sector leadership icons. Prior to his institutional investing career, Joe was the founder and the CEO of the Honor Foundation. In under 5 years, he had grown the organization to a 7,000-person support network on behalf of this mission. Now THF is recognized as the nation's premier career transition institute for the U.S. Special Operations Forces communities. With 10 campus locations near the Special Operations Commands in addition to global campuses, this organization has successfully transitioned over 5,000 operators into their next great adventure in life. He's now the founder and the chairman of an endowment effort called Honor for Life, $100 million endowment that will support honor.org in perpetuity. He's the 20th man in his family to have served in uniform dating back to the American Revolutionary War. He served in the U.S. Navy with every intention of becoming a SEAL. Serious spinal injury prevented him from that dream forming. He was honorably medically retired from Naval Special Warfare in 2013. As a result of his life's work, he's been recognized by many global publications. He's a proud graduate of Merit Music Academy in classical violin. Just if you didn't think that was cool enough bio before, he's also a classically trained violinist, where he now sits on their board of directors, Fenwick High School, DePaul University. He lectures often at funds, firms, foundations, and universities. And he lives in Chicago with his wife and 3 beautiful, strong-willed children, 4, 2, and a newborn Henry. I don't know when that was written on the bio, Joe, so maybe you'll update us on the ages of those kids. Oh, okay, so that's still, you're in the thick of it there. And I just said before, too, at the beginning, Garrett Unkelbach, who led us in 2024, that was the connection kind of to Joe this week, and also PJ Huizinga, who many of you guys know. PJ helped launch this group. Joe spoke at Hinsdale Men's Fraternity. PJ connected me with Joe from there. And one thing PJ told me too, he's like, you don't really even need to serve coffee this morning because Joe's gonna bring the energy. He's pretty intense. I know Garrett, they say he's got resting intensity face. So I'm sure Joe, you're kind of cut from that same cloth, right? Why don't you come on up and lead us today, Joe? Give him a big warm welcome, guys.
recruitment process to get him to run that organization. And we essentially got that company from zero to roughly $500 million in valuation in less than 15 months. But you're going to notice this recurring theme, something that okay, now we're going, I got goosebumps. There we go. And I know that I'm getting you when I get the goosebumps, so that's good. So I will tell you this: when you are 100% absolutely aligned in your work and life, amazing things start to open up. Things that are indescribable, nothing other than God and divine inspired. So this is an interesting story. And it's funny, I haven't spoken on this in a long time. So actually, the last time I spoke on this was last year at Huzenga's men's group. So it's something that lives in me. And there are all these stories that live inside of us. We're all a bundle of stories walking around. It just depends on how carefully you have looked at those stories and arranged them in a certain way to pick out this golden thread. Golden thread is nothing more than a common thread that goes and weaves itself throughout every story in your life. And the best people to actually talk about this golden thread, let me see if you guys can guess who the best people are to talk to about the golden thread, starting with one person who's yourself. And then who's the second person you tell once you start getting curious? Wife. Wife, that's right. And then the third person, once you feel comfortable enough to talk about these things, who do you think you then turn to? Best friend, mentor. That's right. That's right. So it's a very natural progression, right, of who we turn to. First, you start to have this dialogue with yourself. Then you start to get words and courage enough to approach your spouse with a certain perspective, and then you have your truth teller in her. And then you go to your best friend and mentor and be like, are you seeing this too? Anyways, that is something that has happened to me, unofficially called a listening tour. And that happened when I was 24 years old. So that's a good place to start. So one part of the bio that I'm most proud of, to where if I could get hit by a metaphorical bus when I walked out of here, sorry to be morbid, but I would sit there and say, well, at least I created the honor foundation. So it doesn't matter whatever I do in life. That's a very special place. That's where I met Garrett. He was part of a very early group. So the story goes as follows, and it's one that if you want to make God laugh, you tell him about your plans. I've heard this before. We have plans, he laughs, his will happens. And then we either accept it and understand that he's forming and shaping us through whatever challenge, or we fight it and we go about the way. And one thing about podcasts, which I think is funny before I get into this, I said this to Garrett the other day, and a few other folks. You ever notice that podcasts and folks that we listen to, they're on the other side of something? You ever notice that? Someone who did something somewhat extraordinary back then, and now they're reflecting on it. Do you know what a lie that is? And this is what I mean by that. They didn't sound, look, act, communicate, or feel that way when they were going through it at all. Goosebumps again. See where it started. My whole thing is I'm going through the most difficult time and challenge in my work and life right now, and I feel fucking fearless. And there's a reason why. Because I am so aligned with the work that I'm doing, with the life that I'm living, and then I realize that everything that's coming at me is very earthly. And none of it can touch. When I feel aligned and when men of God feel aligned, you are literally unstoppable. So you hear these things all the time. You wonder, like, where are the stories of people going through it? I'm letting you all know right now. I had a wife first. Then I had a wife with a newborn. Then I had a wife with a newborn and a 2-year-old. Then I had a wife with a newborn and a 2-year-old. A newborn, a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old. And now I have a wife with a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, with a husband who works. I don't have a 9 to 5, I have a 5 to 9. There's no stopping it. I wake up, it's on. I go home, I spend my hour and a half with the family, I go to bed, I do it again and again and again and again. There's just something unstoppable. And Garrett has that unstoppable energy, which I think when you are absolutely aligned, you have that energy. And by the way, what's that? Where am I at? Sorry. That's perfect. Thank you. So when you rely on work in life, you have this unstoppable nature. But one thing that I never understand is I'm hearing these people that have overcome these crazy odds and these unbelievable things. It's like, well, how did they feel that strength when they were going through something hard and difficult? Where did they get it from? My grandmother was given an award for 51 years in the Archdiocese of Chicago for teaching CCD. And I'm pretty sure if there was an award for the most angels and hearts and Jesus figurines and Blessed Mothers and Mother Teresa's, my nanny would have won the award because you couldn't go into a room without feeling the presence of Christ. You just couldn't do it. I remember growing up being like, what? First of all, I always say to the child, who are you talking to? All the time. She said, oh, I'm talking to Jesus. Like 7, 12, where is he? And for someone with that level of belief, growing up through, of course, my years in college of disbelief, and then going through my own trials, but not feeling aligned with anything I was doing, trying to wander throughout the world. It was only until I realized that there is a very clear North Star that we all have inside of us. We just haven't taken the time to define it and put words to it. And so now I'll get into the story. So I was the 22nd man in my family to serve. There's I have 2 more questions now. Joined the military, going all the way back to my 5th grade grandfather, who wintered at Valley Forge in 75 and 76. George Washington and Alexander Hamilton. I have his regimental flag in my office at home. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing story about my 5th grade grandfather. My name is on the Alamo. We have relatives that have fought in every major conflict, including World War I and II. It's an amazing posterity story that I feel very deeply, and I think all of us should spend time looking at where we came from, because our ancestors speak to us, and I feel very deeply about that. To give you a quick story on alignment, one of my favorite scriptures of all time is Revelation 20:12. And when I commissioned a historian out of Gettysburg College, which I later realized was called Musselman College, when I called, had no idea. Like, Musselman College. I'm like, hi, who's like, what? And they're like, hi, Musselman Library. Like, how can I help you? And I said, well, wait a minute. It was named after my 4th grade aunt, which I had no idea, who bequeathed her entire estate to the university or to the College of Gettysburg, because she actually did found Musselman's applesauce. So all those years, I'm like, hey, who related to applesauce Musselman's? I'm like, no. But now I'm like, yep, and I don't have any rev share on that. So I'm not of the Adams County Musselmans that way. But point being, it led me on this discovery to figure out where I came from. And it's one thing that I think we're all sons and daughters of Christ. We all come from the Father. We are made in his image. So we understand the premier divine where we come from, but yet what about our earthly posterity? You ask people where they come from in America, they're going to stop at grandpa. And I just couldn't handle that. So I had to figure out more. Flash forward to this on absolute alignment. I get the commission back from Gettysburg Library. The scripture, I'm sitting in my gym when I get this report. I look up on my wall and it says on a big sign, says Revelation 20:12. Do you know the scripture that was read at my 5th grade grandfather's burial in Adams County? They said, here lies Christian Bessler Musselman, a well-liked man from many counties. And we are going to read from his favorite scripture, which is Revelation 20:12. I looked up at my wall. I started to cry. My wife comes down. She's like, now what? But I'm the Italian. Like, she's steady. I'm the one that cries to the notebook, not her. I'll put it that way. I was like, that's how we're going to go. You're not going before me. Not a chance. So when I talk about alignment, we all come from places, spaces, people, stories. And that's why the warfight story in my family resonated with me so deeply. It wasn't a matter of if I would enjoy it. It was a matter of when. And despite withdrawing my OCS package from the Marine Corps, my grandfather and uncle turned over in their grave. And I walked down the hallway to join the United States Navy, become SEAL. What was that? Somebody said amen to that. I was like, yeah, okay. That was my grandfather speaking through you. And then I went to SEAL training. Now, I spent a year and a half doing nothing but training. I did 15 Ironmans over 15 months. I did 1 a month to prepare. All clocked, all time. Half of them were halves, and then the other ones were fulls. And at the end of a 15-month journey like that, your mental toughness is fairly convinced that you can do just about anything. However, I didn't have God as a part of that equation. I would pray kind of, but I didn't know how to pray when I was going in the Navy. I didn't realize that you can't go through trials like that without God. And when I went through training, I did suffer a spine injury. It was a massive compression of my lower L1 through S1. Paralyzed, waist down, right side for about 6 months. Took a long time to get me back on my feet. But when I did, something very strange happened. So imagine training to be a Navy SEAL and then being placed inside of a snack shop to serve Navy SEALs, Snickers bars, and Gatorades. Q2, right? Humility, hubris, right? Nothing's more humbling than that. As it turned out, I just couldn't stop working from an work ethic perspective. So I did my best to make the best of what I was dealt. But I did start to hear something. I started to hear the community of operators saying, "Hey man, what do you do next?" I don't know, man. You know, I've got a buddy down in Texas and we're gonna do something together. Hey, I'm gonna go East Coast, do something over there. And it's like, man, this doesn't sound right. Like the 0.001% warfighter on planet Earth, and they don't have clarity about what they're doing next. That didn't make any sense to me. These are rootin', tootin', frogmen, Navy SEALs, Garretts of the world. And then when I dug into the data, only 13% of the community had jobs when they transitioned. This was in 2012. What happened from 2002 to 2012? We had something going on? Yeah. So we were beating the hell out of cave people for 20 years. And now that big vault of that war fight was over from 2002 to 2012. So all these war fighters are starting to come back. Right? We're talking tip of the spear war fighters. We're not talking, back at home in some place that's comfortable. We're talking front line, tip of the spear, Wild West, trying to figure out what to do in a new environment that we had never fought in before, arguably since Vietnam, silver fighting style. So when I heard that, it didn't make sense to me. And the next thing you know, I started this listening tour unofficially. I didn't call it that then because I didn't know I was actually on one. And I was listening to the stories of the warfighters. And I started to put together one resume, another resume, 100 more. Next thing you know, I placed my first Master Chief in his first job. And it changed my life. I felt the sense of fulfillment. And most importantly, I felt something I wanted them to feel, which was relevance. They always want to feel it. Right? You can only have relevance and you can only have that feeling of fulfillment if you're aligned. Absolutely. Across your working life. If you're not who you are at home, if you're different at work than you are at home, you are lying to yourself in one of those two places. So the question is, how honest do you want to be with yourself? Truly. How honest do you want to be with yourself to have that conversation with yourself first, and then your spouse, then your friend, and then start to slowly align. And it's painful because some of us might be further down your professional journey, your personal journey, and realize, man, I'm in the wrong place. I'm in the wrong space, both mentally, physically, and just in working life. And a big change had to happen. I had to be brought to my knees, experience a ton of pain, to realize that what I was supposed to do, I was never meant to be a SEAL, ever. That was not in my journey. I was meant to make sure that that community never had to worry more about what they did next in life. And some of those statistics do need to be updated. We have 14 campuses across the country and one globally. 14. And we've transitioned nearly 10,000 operators into their next great adventure in life. It went from only 13% having jobs to now 96.8 as of this morning, because I created the dashboard and still get it sent to me, and I don't think the foundation knows this. But the going from 13% having jobs to 96.8% being hired immediately before they even separate them. That's remarkable. That's God's work. 100%. I still believe to this day when I invest in founders, I don't know if they are speaking to Jesus, but I just need to know that Jesus is speaking to the founder. Because I can tell when someone is blind with their work in life. You just can feel it. And again, you owe everyone love, like I said, but you don't owe everyone access. And that's something that's very important on where we spend our time, talent, treasure. And that's exactly what happened post the Honor Foundation. So then I went into venture capital. It makes no sense on the surface that I went from, why, how did you go from running how did you become a non-profiteer and then you move into something with capitalist actually in your title? That doesn't seem to make sense. Well, those are for people that are looking at the iceberg. But we all know how icebergs are, right? And the majority of the iceberg is where? Underwater, right? Are we the covers to our book? Right? No, like we are deep, deep creatures that were created by a divine creature. And so when I started to align myself with what I was meant to do, and I started to pray more and learn how to pray, I don't think pastors talk enough about teaching folks how to pray at all. I don't think we spend enough time on that. Because when we're going through something, we're actually being forced if we're listening. So like right now, I told you I'm going through the hardest part of my work in life. It has little to do with family. It has most to do with work. Family is like the energizer for me, which drives my wife crazy because I come home at 10. And when you've had 3 things under 4 feet hanging on your entire body all day, you were not at a 10 when I get home. So I have to continue to pep talk myself out of the pep when I get home to be more at her level. But work is a struggle. There's evil. I'm gonna Garrett and I just don't think that evil understands. He's fucking good. So like I don't know how else to say it. And I do apologize for cussing, but there's some things that there's a lot of emotion in what we're going through. We're just high-fiving our way through it. Things are bouncing right off of us. And I do mean evil, like we're dealing with pirates, right? That are trying to take something that's ours. What they forgot is that when an unstoppable force meets the immovable object, and those 2 things are Joe and Garrett, another thing coming, dude. So there's literally nothing that we wake up and every day, Garrett and I say the same thing. It says today's the day. Doesn't matter what day it is. You guys know what tomorrow is? It's the day. And then the next day, that's the day too. So there's a relentlessness that you feel when you are driven and when you are absolutely aligned. I didn't become absolutely aligned with my work at the Honor Foundation until I came up with this concept called BMV. Vision, mission, values. Right? So Garrett uses different definitions and we argue over these semantics all the time, but man, that young man and other young people around the country need to understand the sooner you can just take a definition for vision, mission, values and apply it to your life, everything changes because you begin to self-select the people that are around you. What's their vision? What's their mission? What are their value sets? And do they belong around me and those I care about most? And you start to self-select the people around you pretty quickly. I've fired more friends in the last 20 years of my life. I went from being the guy in college that had 1,000 friends, and I had none all at the same time. I just didn't know it. Because when you leave college, it's like, man, where'd all those 1,000 people go? You know? And then all of a sudden, the ones that really truly care about you stick around and stick around and stick around. It turns out, oh, wait a minute, all those are godly men too. So there's an infiniteness that we see the world through. Like Garrett talks about, you have breath in your lungs, God has purpose for your life. You can have one thing that I was taking for Ray Dalio, I've said this a few times actually. You can have anything you want, you just can't have everything you want. And that is very true. And when you are absolutely aligned, you'll get it. So if I were to say right now, how many of you have a very distinct definition of vision? Right now, if I were to ask you, tell me the vision that you have for the world, who built it from right on? Tell me the vision you have for the world. Okay, I like that. So again, I'm a wordsmither, so that was really good. The point is, we're all operating off of different definitions of what vision is. And so when you think of a company, it made perfect sense to me. I'm very practical. I come from a very middle class household. My father was a 41-year construction worker. My mother was a 41-year public school teacher. All the women in my life are in service industries. They're either nurses, social workers. So there's a service element to my family that I grew up in, seeing uniforms in every closet, in every home. But the whole point of vision, mission, values is you have to operate off of the same definition. So I guide vision definition very simply as the world we imagine and hope to achieve alongside others. That others is really important. Even the Son of God needed a support group of 12, okay, to accomplish his broader work. So when I think about vision and we go through our own lives, why don't we start with ourselves, have a clearly defined vision, and then companies get this wrong all the time in violent defense. They talk about mission first, mission vision. So hold on a second. If you don't know what you're going after, one of the best talks on vision you'll ever hear was done in the 60s in Washington, D.C. by a man named Martin Luther King. He said, I have a dream. I have a vision. And if you listen to that, it's basically, there's a 6-minute part of that. He brings you into that world so viscerally, what it would look like, feel like, sound like. And then what happened? He spoke the vision, missionaries went out to accomplish mission after mission after mission, try to bring that vision into reality. So if we figure that out as individuals, here's the vision I see, what that man just said. Right? I imagine a world where, and then you fill in what he just said. Then there's a mission statement, right? Our contribution and impact that our contribution will have in the world. Down into our personal value set. And how many of you all remember the old school projectors that you put the transparent layer on top and it projected up there? If you have the vision, mission, values of your life, you begin to put it over everything that you see. And everyone you speak with and spend time with, share space with. And you'll recognize pretty quickly who's misaligned. As soon as I became very focused on that, with my own vision, my own mission, my own value set, everything changed for me. And I went from raising no money to the Honor Foundation. And then as soon as I took the time to speak on listen on a listening tour, take the words of the community I aim to serve, and then I put those up on the wall. They were their words, not mine. They just aligned with me. They helped me find the words. I went on a listening tour, interviewed over 215 operators across 6 states over 7 months. And they helped inform me on what the vision, mission, value set of the organization needed to be. As soon as I put those words up on that wall, I raised Deca Millions. We built multiple campuses. I started to attract more of the fellows, and evil started to go away. And then all of a sudden, here we are. 11 years later, 10,000 lives later, 14 campuses later. And I can trace it all back to when I put my vision, mission, values, first on myself, then on the community I aim to serve, up on the wall, because it has to be created by them, not you. That's where founders get it wrong. They think it's my vision, my mission, my values. Nope, that's 100% wrong. None of those words should be mine. I told the people that I'm interviewing associates, and I'm like, hey, this is our vision, mission, value set as it stands, but when you get here, we're going to have to reinvent the whole thing. It's like a constitution. There's a process. Your words have to become our words. How does it align with you? If there's changes, great, submit it, we vote on it, then we change the words on the wall. If we vote on it, we think it's appropriate, right? Just like our Constitution. Our Constitution is the most duplicated, replicated political document in the history of the world. There's a reason why. There's a reason why there's a process in place to change those words, add amendments, and so on. So the reason why you can pull from that is why, because our Constitution was written by who? And our founders were who? Godly men. They were godly men. They feared God. They helped guide their hands to write that Constitution. The world can call it what they want. When I hear young people say, we've got to rewrite the Constitution, I'm like, no, you have to reread it. Okay, not rewrite it. You have to reread it because there's nothing wrong with that document. We can change we are the people to we are they them. Like, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Sorry. I don't have. So, but this is what I would say. As soon as I became clear on mission values, and I put specific definitions to them in my work and my life, I put it on my firm, for example. I started off in venture, a generalist VC, venture capitalist. I was investing in HR software in Latin America and hypersonic missiles. Which one do you think I was more aligned with? HR software in Latin America or hypersonic missiles to fight the Chinese threat? Yeah, hypersonic missiles. So when I stopped trying to be a generalist and I wanted to be a specialist with a very clear alignment of vision, mission, values, I went from 10 million to 100 million, and then from 100 million to $1 billion under management in under 12 or 15 months. That is not me, man. I have very little to do with that. Right? I don't believe that founders even have their own ideas. I don't believe that. I believe they are given ideas. Right? They were put in the right place. They were listening to the right things. And that's why I said, I just want to know if God is working through them. And then I stick to a very simple investment thesis. And a big part of it is qualitative, meaning do they focus on TLC? That's a tribute and hat tip to my mom. She'd always say, don't forget where you come from, son. Right? Doesn't mean tender love and care the way Wendy Musselman used to use it. It means teams, leadership, and culture. There's a teams, leadership, and culture quotient that lives inside of all your institutions. And if I could sit in an institution, I could tell you in a matter of minutes how aligned the institution is. And any problem that you're experiencing right now, how many of y'all work in a business or own a business? Raise your hand. Okay, it's just about everybody. Young man, you're in the business of the household and school, so you can raise your hand. So here's what I mean by misalignment in TLC. Any issue that's happening in your work and life, especially at work for this specifically, I can relate that to any issue. It's going to be related to the teams at the company. It's going to be related to the leadership, or it's going to be related to the culture. Any problem I've ever heard in the company ever, it all comes down to TLC. But yet in venture, when I arrived, everyone's about these quants and spreadsheets and like, oh, we got to look at financials. Financials. This company was just started last year. What financials? Right? What are we relying on? No, this is a jockey business. I'm betting on the jockey, the team, their leadership, and they form a culture that sticks. And so when I align mission values to a thesis, especially national security, which is what BUBC is our focus as a specialist. We have a 10X fund, top decile, right? So I went under those. When you look at these numbers, associates that I kind of coach and talk to, I tell them something that they won't believe, and they might roll their eyes on the inside when I say this. But I mean, the less I focus on money, the more it shows up. I can't explain. The only thing I can explain is that I feel absolutely aligned in my work. It's play. It doesn't feel like work to me because I'm absolutely aligned. And it can all be traced back to vision, mission, values, and taking the time to figure out the VMV of your own lives. So I'm probably right at 5 or more than that. Good? Okay. So when I'm at, if there's one thing I wanted you to walk away with, it's VMV. Okay. It is a godly, I call it the TLC equation, right? How do we get, everyone talks about culture. Oh, the culture here is great. The culture of this room is very clear to me. And we should do a VMV exercise. That'd be fun. So the culture, you have to think of it as you need to first have definitions for teams, for leadership, for culture. That culture is the end of the spectrum. Vision, mission, values, principles, ethos equals extraordinary teams, leaders, and cultures. That's the equation, right? But we have to clearly define all of those things. And I didn't want to throw the whole equation into, but it's just VMV. Just keep that. When people talk about their North Star, stop them in their tracks and say, what? What is your North Star? I hear that all the time. It's like, North Star, what is your North Star? What do you mean when you say that? Right? For me, it's very clear. Vision, mission, values. That is the North Star. It never moves. It's the guiding light in work and life. So I don't know if you do Q&A or anything, but I'm happy to stick around and answer questions now, later. Doesn't matter. I'm very accessible. My email is joe@bv.bc. And Aaron will.
Sorry, son. It kind of one thing that got put on my heart when I was just here to talk was the prayer we had last week, where Pastor Bill that we listened to said, God, you're saying you're in a tough, part of life right now. You're to think of it. And that prayer was that God, don't make my life easier to be broader shoulders to handle the work that you have for me to do. That's a prayer. And that's just what I kept hearing. And to your last point too, when he was talking about, the vision, mission, the culture, all of what you do at TLC. I was fortunate. I got the opportunity. I invested in your raise. What was it, 15 months ago?
Oh, that's right.
So,
for Union. That's right.
So I was an investor in Union, and I'll be completely honest with you. I did not read a single document.
You didn't ask for it. No,
I just sent over it. But I knew
his
alignment,
yeah,
and I knew his purpose, and I said, "I'll sign my name, and here's the money." So You're not on the jock, you're not on anything that's written down. I'm
That's
just
very strict.
I'm sorry, I forgot. It's fine.
But again, you don't pay attention to it and just more shows up. I can't explain it, but when you're aligned, other aligned men notice that alignment.
So thank you so much. Well, we're gonna take prayer requests and then I'll pray us out. And Joe said he's so gracious to stand up here. I know you were leaving this afternoon for a closing, right, in New York City?
Yeah.
So he was gonna leave right from here, but he moved it back so we can spend a little time and talk to you guys. So I really appreciate that. I'm really grateful for your time. Give it up one more time for Joe, man.